What's happening?
Not much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Your father speaks very highly of you.
That's good.
What is it like to have Jordan Peterson as a dad? Is it weird? Do you have to check yourself constantly, make sure you're on steady ground and not say anything ridiculous?
No, not at all. Not at all. I didn't realize it was weird until I went away to university and then kind of was away for a while. And then when I came back to the house, especially because the house is full of like paintings and masks and statues and like 32 different paint colors. And I came back and was like, oh, maybe he's a bit eccentric.
No, he's definitely eccentric. We were talking off air about what it was like to watch your dad become famous and become famous in his 50s, right? Like,
yeah, 54, 55.
That's when he became famous. Before that, relatively unknown, respected professor, one issue with this one transgender bill, the preferred pronouns bill, and then boom, off to the races.
Yeah.
Is it strange?
It was super weird, especially how the media was portraying him and how what was actually happening at the events wasn't what was being portrayed in the media. So that was weird to watch. And then people recognizing him on the streets is strange. It's
when you say
weird.
What happened in real life was not what was being portrayed, like what was different?
Mostly what he was saying. So most of what he said is on film anyway. So you can go to YouTube and see what he's been saying. There's not like some secret that's going around, but what's been portrayed has been so much more negative than what he's actually said. Or they'll take like sound bites and just weave a story that isn't quite true, which I didn't for some reason now it looks silly, but for some reason I just thought that what the media was portraying was honest.
Always.
Yeah,
me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not.
Well, they're writers, and there's a real issue today. That issue, I've talked about this before, but the issue is clicks. It's not just about what's the facts of the story. It's about these publications are struggling to stay alive. And one of the only ways that they can get people to click on stories is salacious headlines, make things really clickbaity. And that's what they focus on. And they focus on negative aspects that are going to get people riled up. They have to have an angle. And I've talked to people who are writers who will write something, and then I'll talk to them and I'll say, hey, man, this is not what we talked about or what happened. And they said, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even write that. The headline was completely written by the editor. So the editor came in, changed it all up, changed this, put some dots out of things, cut off sentences so that they seemed more, just more controversial than they really are, because they didn't allow the counterpoint of, sometimes you say something and then you say, or it could be this. Well, the or it could be this part is cut out. They do things like that just to stay alive, because I think really big publications, whether it's the New York Times or, the Boston Globe, like big publications are struggling for their life right now because people don't want to buy newspapers anymore. And and getting people to read things online is very difficult. And you have to do something salacious. You have to do something that's enticing for them to click on it.
Yeah, I guess, but wouldn't you say that's just driving them down?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, they're fucked. It's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's it opens up the door for alternative media. But some of those alternative media sources don't have journalistic integrity either. So then it becomes a real issue. That's a problem with a lot of online news shows, is like they take a very obvious editorial spin as well on the news. And if you just read or watch their show, you would go, oh, well, it's this way because these guys are saying it's this way. But it might not be that way. There's no real objective source. It's very hard to find a good objective source. I mean, sometimes I count on the New York Times. But there's been some things that I've read from the New York Times that I know are not accurate.
I think they had a terrible article about Dad in like June or something. Yeah.
Well, he didn't make it any easier on himself by using that forced monogamy argument.
Term? No.
Yeah, enforced monogamy argument or term. Because I don't, even with when you understand it as a psychological concept, that it is a culturally enforced idea, I still don't think that applies to incels. I just don't think it has.
No.
I don't think it makes any difference at all. And he and I discussed it on the podcast. I'm like, you're not, just because you say it's a good idea and the culture agrees that it's a good idea for people to be monogamous, I don't necessarily think that that is going to help these guys at all.
I don't think we know what's going to help those guys.
Yeah. Well, obviously they're all individuals and their situations vary. But what we're talking about for people like, what the fuck are they talking about? There was a quote in the New York Times where this woman was asking him what to do about these incels, which are involuntary celibates, and one of them had driven a car into a crowd of people and killed a bunch of people because he was frustrated because he couldn't find a mate. Mm-hmm. And your dad suggested that culturally enforced monogamy would be perhaps a solution for that. And then a bunch of people went crazy saying that like he's saying that women should sacrifice themselves and fuck these guys so that they don't drive cars into crowds.
Yeah.
It's like, it was everybody made a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's an answer for those guys. I really don't. But
no.
But those kind of articles are like the editorial articles and opinion articles. It's a different thing than reporting on the news, right?
Yeah, I thought so honesty was always a big thing in our house, and it was like, don't lie, because if you lie, eventually the lie will surface and it'll be so much bigger than the hell you get from telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just assumed that the media did that. Yeah, the world just worked like that.
Yeah. Nope.
No. I know that now.
Yeah.